to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we'll open the meeting, public comment on any subject not on the agenda. Is there any public comment? Jim?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Fulford had mentioned here a couple of times here that we're working towards having an audio, possibly even a video system. I just want to let you know, if you're interested, I have a speaker system that will plug 2 microphones into it, one that could possibly be there and one at the podium. If you're interested, I can bring that down and have it at the disposal of the county, which would help everybody. And guess what the cost of that is? Free.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Yes?
I have something that's going to be on the agenda for next week that I wanted to discuss regarding the utility easement, if I could say that at this time.
Could you step up to the podium, please, and state your name, please?
My name is Amanda Wall, and I will be building up there in Springville, next to Springville, and I know that at a previous meeting it was declared county roads up there. We will be using Gold Clean Trail as access over to our easement, to our property, and at this time it does not have a utility easement. I am working with Nicole and Mary regarding working on getting a draft, a utility easement declaration signed on Thursday. I have a meeting for that, and I also have a neighbor that is disputing the road going in. So we're working on that as well. But I wanted to see if you guys had any guidance or advice for me on anything I can be working on before next week.
I would think you would want to talk to Nicole Brown. She's sitting right here. She's
Yeah, I am working with her on it as well. I just wanted to pop in and show face and ask for any further guidance before we were to discuss my concern next week, and if there was anything that you needed me to do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Mike, Corey got lost on the call, so he needs to call in again.
Yeah.
He said the pledge was going on, but, so I can
So
tell him to dial back in?
Yes.
Okay.
So we have minutes here from August 26, 2019.
I will move to approve those minutes as submitted.
Second.
Motion been made and second to approve the minutes for August 26, 2019. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Do you sign these or I sign? Put your name.
Right, as you are the chair now, I would say you sign them, right, Ann? Either way. I signed yours last week, so we'll trade.
You gotta work with more than I do.
Just hit speaker.
Yeah, but it's not marked. Is it this one here? Is it gonna be this one?
Yeah. Are you there? Okay, I'm gonna put you on speaker. Are you there? Okay.
Perfect. Got him. Have claims in the amount of $2,453.25.
No second?
Motion been made and seconded to pay claims and set them out. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. A restitution receipt from Bill Flannery in the amount of $232.45 $1.52. A Broadwater County Health Alert Information Sheet, severe pulmonary disease among adolescents and young adults who report vaping. There have been several cases of this back east where young kids have died from lungs collapsing and they don't know what the ingredient is, what it is. So if you've got teenage kids, keep an eye on them. Those things are mighty small and you can't even see them. A letter from DEQ to the Montana Department of Environmental Quality proposed technologically enhanced naturally occurring radioactive material, tenerum, waste rules. See proposed rules, go to DEQ's rule notification webpage. Formal comment period will end October 21st, 2019. A formal public hearing will be held during the comment period. One meeting will be in Glendive, September 24th, 2019 at 6 p.m. And the other meeting will be in Helena on October 10th, 2019 at 9 a.m. Have a letter here from Sandfire Resources in West Perth, Australia. They are the company that is running the Black Butte mine in White Sulphur. Thanks us for our participation in meeting with them and look forward to meeting and keep us informed of progress and meeting with us again on our next visit. So hopefully that'll be some economic boom for the county and for Marr County. Of the Lincoln Ranger District, Helena Lewis and Clark National Forest, opportunity to object to the Stonewall Vegetation Project. Marr County Forest and Range Field Workshop, September 17th to the 18th. White Sulphur Springs Ambulance Barn, 1 p.m. September 17th. That's it for me. I guess we can go to a commissioner's update. I was out of state on the medical, so I didn't do anything last week.
We had a defensive driving class required for anyone who uses county vehicles. I understand that was very well attended the first day and well attended the second day, although not as many people. It was a great class. It will also help not only our individual insurances when we get our certification, but it'll help save us money for the county. Other than that, there were a couple of community meetings and budget meetings.
Also attended the defensive driving class, a lot of different webinars, researching our proposed website and the equipment that might go with the cameras and the audio video equipment. So we're moving forward with that, and also had a chance to meet with the Carbon County Commissioners. They're contemplating building a law enforcement center in their county. They wanted to come down and they met with sheriff and undersheriff and myself. Gave them the tour and talked about pros and cons of going into jail.
So we'll close the commissioners meeting and open the public hearing to adopt the fiscal year 2020 county budget. This is open for public comment. Is there any public comment or departmental comments?
I guess, part of this budget process we get a little frustrated with is getting the final budget approval on Friday. I was out of town, the sheriff got it, and I was unable to look at it till this day, so this morning. Which seems to be a few mix-ups between my system and Debbie's system and numbers, so we got those worked out. There are a couple mistakes on my end, a couple added revenues that didn't make sense that I didn't have on any of my sheets. So we got those taken out of there, and I'm assuming Debbie's not here, probably because she's working on all the corrections that need to be made this morning before you guys finalize this, but it basically comes down to we're gonna take a $22,907 cut on our deputy wages, so we're gonna cut a quarter of position to make this year's budget. So there were conversations that Debbie and I had that apparently didn't get worked out, and it's a little frustrating, so we're not gonna hire a deputy for a quarter of a year, or hopefully make up that savings, so just letting you guys know that. Any questions about it?
Were those revenues that you had that she had that you didn't have, or?
Well, there's, the problem is with like the jail revenue, for instance, there's the numbers didn't add up, and then we located the error. That was actually on our side where we were gonna charge the state the $69, but then the budget was approved. We got the communication with the state took place, and we didn't have to do all the resolutions and things that they were requesting. So it stayed at the 67, that was a $7,000 error. There was an added revenue, which we discussed, that I don't know why it was still thrown in there, for $11,000 through Zerker, which there is a credit at Zerker of $7,000, but that's money that is already spent. We're already making the payments on that money. That was what's left over. So it's not going to come into the county as revenue. It's not gonna go out as an expense. It's just sitting there. So we have to spend that at Zerker. That's what the loan for that program was for. So problem is nothing with that company is $11,000. So we just haven't touched it or spent it. Maybe someday in the future we will. So that was another negative in our budget. And then some confusion on our mills and like personal property tax and things that weren't explained earlier in the year. And now me and Debbie and I got that worked out, and which took out another about $3,000 out of our budget. So to make it balance, and under great protest from the sheriff this morning on the phone, we're gonna cut $22,000 out of our deputies' wages to balance that budget. And with that is also we'll probably end up going a full year without it because of, as you all know, the issues with getting people hired in the jail and our dispatch center right now. We can't get people hired, so in the dispatch we had 2 great applicants. One position was available, so we ended up hiring both of them to use a little bit of the vacancy savings of Captain Wenzel leaving. But now that there's a position open in the jail, we haven't got any applications. That's being opened for a 3rd time now, and it's not looking pretty. So we're going to use all that vacancy savings to make up for needing to get people in those positions. And if we have an opportunity to, we can hire an extra one if needed there, so because we have to keep that open. So I guess, I understand we have to have a deadline, and it's frustrating that it has to happen on a Friday, and then we don't get to find and work out our mistakes until Monday. So if we don't get here. So I was out of state. That's kind of where our budget is right now.
So you're looking at $22,900.
We're cutting $22,907.43 to balance our budget.
Brandon, did you take into account that you were planning to fund Corey the $19,000 out of PILT rather than out of the 43-8 account? Like,
Yeah, I took that, that's already
Okay.
taken out of there, so, just the 22,000. But Debbie and I got it all worked out this morning. There she is, so, let her explain if she needs to, but we got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Any other comments?
This is Corey. I have a comment when everyone else is done, but I can't see the room, see if hands are up, so just tell me when I can go.
You can go ahead, Corey.
Well, I guess the first thing I'd say in general is I believe we are on the verge of a crisis with the sheriff's office funding, and I would urge you guys to look at this and see where you can give more revenue to the sheriff's office for what they're doing. I mean, each of these positions are essential, and so we're talking long-term vacancy savings in order to balance their budget. We are taking from a place that's essential, and we're gonna pay the cost. We're gonna pay the cost of something going wrong in the jail without adequate supervision there. I know Brandon's being very soft-spoken, but the reality is that these are not painless steps that are being taken. And I'm really concerned about the fact that, these documents are becoming available literally right before, I came back last night and pulled all the documents up, but that's just because I happen to be gone out of town. But I mean, we've had a lot of discussions lately about having documents available, having people having adequate time to look at them, and yet every single year when we do a budget, this is what happens. We literally get the documents at with almost no time to analyze and respond before you're going to adopt the budget. And as I understand from these revenue issues, and I guess I'll ask Brandon if he wants to comment on this. I talked to Wynn last night, and he thought that there was an increased estimate of jail revenue from prisoners that looked unrealistic. And so if that's something that is going to be used to balance the budget, and yet they're not going to have sufficient revenue and they've got to leave positions vacant, this is really harmful, really harmful. And if you have the money to do market wage adjustments like you did a couple weeks ago, I'm asking you to look closely and find the revenue for this department to carry out its operations. There's very few things that are as high risk as what the sheriff's office has to do, whether it's supervising prisoners or out on the street. And they really need that revenue. So I'm just asking you to not, this is not like a boy who cried wolf type of thing. I'm concerned that we are, in this budget year, going to have some serious consequences we're going to have to, as a county, face from underfunding of the sheriff's office budget. So that's just a general comment on that. As far as further details, I would ask you to follow Brandon's, or ask Brandon's questions for details. I do have a couple questions on my budget. And so the first one, and I'm just going to raise this, and actually I'll do this last because this one probably will have a little bit of a discussion. That's going to be on the Victims Advocate budget. So I'll start on just the revenue. Do you guys have the revenue document in front of you? It's that 99-page deal. I have a question on page 22. So on page 22 of the revenue budget report, there's near the bottom of the page, that's the litigation case, which is, as I understand, the Barris case. We're naming it the litigation case now. So other financing sources, it says 383000 interfund operation, and lists the PILT donation, and then it shows transfer from general fund, Corey's military repayment. in the last year, we did use that money for the Barris case. And this year, I asked for that money to be used in a different place. If you look at my budget memo from June 3rd, on the bottom of page 2, I asked specifically for that to be used in the in operations for the it's line item. It's probably line item 330, publicity subscription dues, specifically because we are purchasing this software, this prosecution case management software, and the three sources of funds that I had identified to pay for that were some leftover funds from last year's budget, a grant that Brooke had obtained from the Board of Crime Control, and then my contribution from my salary. So that's, Brooke's grant was $7,300, my contribution was $9,600, and then basically we need to find another $4,000 to $5,000 of leftover funds, which we have identified. So I did want to point out that I think that's the correction that's needed in that revenue report on page 22, and then certainly in terms of where that money gets applied, that's where it needs to be applied. I got a few more, but any questions on that before I go to the next issue?
No, I don't have any.
Okay. Second issue is page 31 of the expenditure report. So page 31 of the expenditure report shows the expenditure for the litigation, the major litigation. It looks like these are the numbers we talked about, which is the final budget 2019-2020 would be $100,000 from PIL and then $19,000 from PIL to replace the 438 Memorial Fund. So that's what we discussed. Here's what I'm trying to understand. There was, and I don't have the amount at hand, but there were somewhere between $2,000 and $5,000 left over from last year's budget in this account that had not been spent. And I understood that was going to be carried over because that was going to round out that goal. I'm still trying to get to 125 to pay off that balance. And it wasn't going to quite get us to 125, but it was going to get us close. And then the contribution from Beaverhead County was probably going to finish that off. I can't tell from these numbers whether it reflects that carryover, that small amount of, like I said, I don't know exactly what it is. It's somewhere in the 2,000 to 5,000 range. Is it captured in this line, or can you show me somewhere else where it might be captured?
Is that money still available? Debbie?
It sits in the cash in the fund.
It's in the cash fund, Corey?
Okay, where do I
Which
look
does
for
not
that?
reflect in the budget or the revenue report. You have to get a separate cash report to see that.
Can you tell me which page to look at?
It's not in either one of those pages. There's no page to look at. It's in a separate
couldn't hear-
report,
I couldn't
cash
hear all that.
report for that fund. So you should have had a cash report. Everybody can pull those. Look in the litigation
Okay,
fund in the
so
cash. That
You're
is
saying
money
there's a cash
also
report
available to
showing
spend.
cash that's currently in that account that would carry over. Is that accurate?
That carries over. Anything you don't spend in the prior year carries over.
Okay, so I just want to ensure that that's the commissioner's understanding, because I don't want it to be, yeah, it's supposed to carry over and then we can't find it later. So is that everyone's understanding on the leftover?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's not a lot of money, but it is a little bit, and I am planning to put it into the aggregate for the payoff thing. Okay. My last question is on page 37 of, I believe, the expenditure report. report. So page 37 of the expenditure report, the bottom half of that is the Crime Victims Assistance Program. So I spoke with Brooke, and I believe it sounds like the budget, you know, the issue we talked about a couple weeks ago was that the grant is $96,000 over 2 years, which is about $48,000 per year for the victim witness advocate total. And so that appeared to be a shortfall of around $4,500. Talking to Brooke this morning, she believes that that has been covered. I just don't personally understand how it's covered. If someone could just briefly explain that to me, that's my last question.
Like I explained in a previous meeting, Brooke gets grants that overlap our fiscal year. And at the time we were working on budget, her fourth quarter grant payment hadn't been received. So as I have to work on these documents based on a point in time of June 30th, she was short revenue. Once that revenue comes in the new fiscal year, it covers her expenditures plus her grant money that comes in the rest of the year. So at the end of the year, where she needs to be, she has the money she needs plus an excess to cover her expenses. But budget reports are that, just what you want to expend. Revenue reports, just what you anticipate in revenue. They don't factor in the cash that's available to include in your expenditures.
So that's another cash report, just like you mentioned before, that
Everybody
money
has
is set
access to
aside as
get,
a
cash is what you
fund.
have. Revenue comes in with your taxes, grants, every source to add to your cash. You add those two together, here's what I want to spend. Everything I anticipate to spend, hopefully no more, hopefully less. This is what I spend. Your cash and any revenues you get, plus your expenditures, should break even. And you should actually come out ahead of cash if your budget is appropriate and you'll have carryover. And that's what happens with Brooks. We've gone through this in the 19 years I've been here with her, or 13 years, excuse me. Hers with that is always a lapse. In the past, general fund covered it, so it wasn't big an issue. Now that she's on her own, it does take a little more forward thinking and making sure everything is okay.
So,
It's just
so what is that amount of that's in the cash that's carryover that meets that shortfall?
Well, I don't have that report with me because our tax levy requirement sheet works as of June. But I believe it was like gonna be 5,500 off the top of my head. Because the cash report's,
6,500?
the cash report's correct, 5,500, 5500.
Okay. And so, okay, I'm just asking the question. Sounds like you're a little.
I'm talking loud so
I'm not
everybody can hear me.
trying
No,
to
I'm talking loud so
understand.
everybody can hear me.
If they're gonna vote on it today, I wanna know the numbers are locked in. That's what I'm trying to find out.
I know Brooke's revenue is here now. She'll have it in her future reports. But with the tax levy requirement sheet, minus the few changes, and Brandon and I worked on it this morning, the numbers are good.
Okay, so I'm asking is can someone tell me that number? Or if it's in the revenue report, so I think what I hear you saying is it's not gonna be reflected in the revenue report or the expenditure report, it's gonna be reflected in the, cash report. Is that correct?
Correct, because of our tax levy requirement sheet was as of June. It had not been received as revenue.
Right.
It didn't
because
come
of
in
the
until
reimbursement.
August. So even the budget reports for revenue, it includes all that revenue coming in for the year, plus the back money we're owed for the fourth quarter, because they're on a different fiscal year than we are. So it's like getting the grant plus another quarter. It's like paying for, borrowing the previous quarter to move forward.
Okay, so I'm sure the people will have questions, and I'm sure there's a long discussion. I wondered if is it possible that someone could pull that cash report number and we could just mention it again before the vote? I don't know, is that something that, Sherry, you know how to pull from Black Mountain, or?
Well,
I
as
don't
of
know what
which-
the
well,
specific
as of
number
which
is.
month? Which month are you looking for? Cash balance as of June, July, August?
I'm looking
guess
for the
June.
number that says
Left them.
today, when the commission votes on it, that there's a $4,500 per year shortfall in Brooks' budget, which from the grant, there should be, that is covered, either through her cash, which is fine, and I'm not objecting to that as a method, or the commission has approved some other way to make up those funds. I mean, the idea is to vote on this budget today, and we know how difficult it is to go back in time and do adjustments or amendments or whatever. I'm just saying, can we get that number locked in today before they vote, so we all know that it is taken care of, and we're not in 6 months having to revisit this issue?
Okay, now here's something else I need to explain that everybody has a really hard time understanding. Anytime as of June 30th, we have a negative cash balance in any fund, we cannot have that. Auditors, we will get dinged for it. We're borrowing money without approval from other funds. So what has to happen to make sure that we're covered is PILT gives a short-term loan to any of those funds that are in the negative as of June 30th. Because in this case, there's no revenues being received because of the quarterly offsets. We can't help that, Brooke can't help it, the commissioners can't help it, it's just part of the nature of county business. So what the commissioners have agreed to do, and I have authority to do, is to make short-term loans to those various funds. Brooks was one of them, because as of June, her revenue had not been here. Come July 1st, that loan is repaid when the grant money comes in, and then some. So her short-term loan was $10,000. Her grant revenue was $13,000. And I'm not speaking concrete numbers, because I have a lot of numbers in my head, and it's really hard to concretely put those. There should be reports out there for everybody to look at. But then that's where the fund itself takes care of things moving forward, so that at the end of the year, she stays with what she spent, knows the revenue she's gonna get, she will have that reserve. There is no shortfall.
A few minutes ago, sorry, bothering you again. You said that he could see this in the cash report? This
Cash
money?
report shows everything you have. So by the time the revenue gets here, it'll show that short-term loan. If it doesn't get here until I get that journal done, which I have not done yet, we're just finalizing budget. So for a while, her budget might show $23,000 until I repay that $10,000 back to PILT.
So he can't pull it today and see it?
He could see it, because I haven't done the journal to take it out of there, and the revenue's here.
How
So
does a person pull that report?
all the staff has access to those reports. They change daily with everything that Doug puts in. They're hard for me to concretely go by, because they change every day. So what I say today will change tomorrow.
Okay, so commissioners, do you understand what it is I'm just trying to get assurance of? I'm just trying to get that, I'm trying to ensure that that hole is plugged, and we aren't some months down the road coming back trying to find $4,000 for Brooks' budget. That's it. That's full simplicity what I'm trying to get assurance on.
So we're looking at the budgeted cash reserves, right? That's what he's asking for. And so the budgeted cash reserves is $5,576.
Yes.
So that will, is the shortfall from Brooks Grant, what is the total over a 2-year period?
That's not something that can be determined, because every year revenues and expenditures change. We can guarantee what the grant revenue hopefully is, but if they give more, she spends less, those are unknowns that cannot be determined at this point, because we're not working on next year, we're working on this year.
Well, but her grant is a 2-year grant at 96,000, so it's a set amount of 48,000 each year.
Right, but she has her surcharges, if she doesn't spend everything she wanted to spend, those are all factors that daily can influence what the outcome for next year's budget will be.
Okay, but for today's budget, I'm looking at a number of 53,016. Correct?
As an expenditure,
Yes.
Yes.
Expenditure, page 37.
that is what she gave me.
Okay. So right there, we're at a shortfall of $5,000. So if the budgeted cash reserve of 5570 or 76, whatever it is, that can be applied to it, then that's fine. That doesn't cover next year's budget, which is fine, we can address that next year, but we can't bet on the come if that 5,500 didn't get built up over a single year is my guess. My guess is that's maybe a couple years. So that full 5,500 for surplus may not be there next year. That's what I'm trying to figure out. And I guess.
And there's no certainty for any of us on that. There's
Question
no-
on the same line item, since we're looking at page 37. If salaries and wages is 44,800, which I assume is it's for the COLA. If you look at the items that are tied to wages below that, unemployment insurance, workers' comp, FICA, and PERS, they all went down. I guess PERS stayed the same. But unemployment insurance, workers' comp, and FICA and Medicare all went down relative to the previous year's numbers while the salary went up.
And those are gonna fluctuate as well based on the rate changes that we're forced to adhere as they go up and down. Those are something I can't predict,
everybody
and
go
those
down?
are everybody, it happens to everybody. Based on their hourly rate, their number of hours, their rate of pay, everybody's goes up and down. This year we saw half unemployment, we were at 0.45, now we're at 0.25. So yes, unemployment went down. Work comp should have actually gone up because the mod factor went up. But the percentage went down, so how those formulas work and affect all that, those are gonna change every year. There's no way for us to even predict those.
Okay,
That's
but
why-
so like the same line items for my salaries and budget from our office, unemployment insurance went down, workers' comp went up slightly, FICA and Medicare went up. It struck me as odd that those numbers went down on Brooks. That's all the questions I have, Commissioners. I'm just trying to ensure that what I understand is a $4,500 to $5,000 hole in Brooks' budget is, it looks like it's 5,000, just over 5,000. That's made whole. So I'll stand by if anybody has questions for me.
Does anybody have anything else for Cory? Do you have anything for Cory? I don't think anybody else has anything for you, Cory. Thank you.
I'll just be quiet here and just listen to the rest of
Okay.
it. Thanks.
Any other comments?
Today, Cory had a couple questions on the jail.
Okay.
And so just real quick, we are finding that it's gonna be hard to meet the projected revenue of $868,000, based on all our own inmates that we've had in jail. So like last week, we had 14 here in Broadwater County. We had 2 that have some conflicts that we're paying to be in Helena. So the higher our numbers are, the worse it is. So the more we actually use the jail, what it's built for is bad for us. And like today, we have 6 in our jail, 2 that we're paying for in Helena at a higher rate than what we charge. So it's $2 extra a day. So it's going to be a pretty tight year. And like I said, when we discussed, get people to apply for a $14 an hour job to work in that environment is not easy. I think that was all your questions, was it, Corey?
Yeah, I guess I just wanna, is there a different revenue number that you think is more realistic as far as tied to the number of prisoners? As I understand that number, is that number tied to like 35 paying prisoners? I'm not sure if that number is what I understand it to be.
It's the same number as last year, but we raised the jail rate up by $2, so it's 35 inmates at $67.95 a day. With the numbers we've been showing over the past month, probably 30 inmates is going to be pushing it, but I know we do say that every year, and over the years we've been coming in at a higher revenue based on that we pack it over full when we can, which adds to more incidents within our jail. But it goes up and down. I mean, last year we went down to 20 paying inmates at one time, and then we had months to where there was 46 paying inmates, so we try to balance that out as much as we can.
So last year's budget, end of the year, what was the, what number of paying inmates? I understand there's, an average or whatever, but what did it end up as?
I don't have the exact final number, but I would say upwards to probably 36, 37 actual inmates per day is what it averaged out to be.
Actual or out external, so they're paying?
Paying
Okay.
customers.
And so what is this year's budget pegged at? How many inmates?
I would say roughly 37 as it probably panned out to be.
So do you have the revenue in your budget to do a market wage adjustment for your dispatchers?
No, we're cutting $22,000 out from deputy sheriff's salaries just to maintain where we're at today.
So how much revenue do you need to be able to do a market wage adjustments for dispatch?
Well, we're having issues, I guess for dispatch, we were gonna need, when the mill values came in high, we looked at doing that, we felt like we could, but then with the state taking mills away, therefore reflecting on our mills, it was gonna be upwards of like 30,000. High 20s for what we wanted to give them, but now nothing. Outside of everybody will get the COLA.
So do you consider that something important for your next year to be able to do a market wage adjustment for dispatchers?
Well, we've felt it's been important for the entire office, but we've never been able to do it. Every year it seems like it's tighter and tighter. Expenses go up. Like with the city, the increase on our water bill alone was $17,000 for the entire year. So and equipment, unfunded mandates, everything that we do continues to rise, and you just can't get those wages to where they need to be.
So I guess what would you recommend or request that be changes from the budget that's right in front of you right now?
Well, I'd like more mills would be nice, but just looking, they're just not there. The only question I do have is maybe for the commission, is that on the mill sheet, is this leftover mills? Is this leftover mills from each department?
No, that's the percentage of reserves
Percentage
that
of
those that
reserve.
get mills have.
Yeah. So the sheriff's office needs mills, is what we need. not jail, we gotta get away from the jail revenue is what it comes down to, as much as we can.
Brandon, Mr. Jabraki, when he came in, what did he recommend for the sheriff's office budget for this year?
Well, he didn't really recommend a budget, but it basically comes down that to get away from the jail revenue, because it's so high and it's so unpredictable, is that we need mills, we need actual funding to run the sheriff's office. You know, it's been said 100 times over, is Broadwater County doesn't pay for the jail. All the outside revenue for the jail comes from outside the county, from other counties. So we need to figure out how to get that. We know what it costs to run the jail. We need at least that in mills, and then you can still try to raise revenue with but you're not forced to raise it all with revenue outside funding.
So what does it cost to run the jail?
I think we were upwards to 500 and some thousand now. The problem is that we've been, I guess, forced to raise the revenue is what I would say, up to a point that now pays for dispatch, deputy sheriffs. It's all mixed in there. So if you close the doors of that jail today, you'd have to find roughly $300,000 to house our inmates in another county. Out of what we get $636,000 in taxes. The sheriff so we're gonna lose a couple deputy sheriffs, which he has said that we can't maintain the city contract, so then we lose another $250,000. We can't do the BOR contract because we won't have enough time or ability to do that, so we lose another $82,000. So you have to run a dispatch center and deputy sheriffs off of basically 636, 129,000 in state entitlement. I hope we wouldn't lose that. And then some other miscellaneous revenues.
So why was the jail built? Was it built to generate revenue for payroll?
It was yes. It was built years ago. Basically, they were going to get a lot of lawsuits because the jail at the time was not up to code, and the living conditions weren't right for what you have to have, the standards for inmates, and they built it. The problem is that it didn't get built. You should have had a mill levy before the jail got built, because it can't to fund the operations is what should have happened, and now we're stuck with a jail that have to raise all the money to operate it.
So why is the revenue forced up so high?
Basically, the costs are all going up, and we've supplemented the funds to where they've started paying for the other departments of the sheriff's office.
So you think the only solution is a mill levy? More?
Yes.
So
But it was-
Brandon, I know that one of the recommendations we made to the Carbon County Commissioners was you have to have the mills there to support the jail.
Yeah,
You can build it, but you gotta have the funding in place to support it, right?
Yeah, it's similar to what Lewis and Clark County just did with their renovation of their jail. Was that the jail passed, but then the funding of the jail didn't pass. So they didn't build the jail because the funding to operate it didn't pass with it. There were two separate mill levies. So they didn't do anything until that part passed, and then they started moving forward with that. And that's probably the way it should have been done in the past. And that's what we recommended to the Carbon County commissioners, was that build it because you need it, which they absolutely need a jail, that we house their inmates here, along with Billings and all over the state, wherever they can find beds, and then get a mill levy to fund the jail, so if you don't have to be in the same boat that we're in every year, arguing and fighting and scrapping, looking for the scraps off the table.
So then next year in August, when we lose Lewis and Clark County, we're going to have less of a revenue.
Yeah,
I mean, it has to be cut. There's no way that they would be able to.
not if we lost Lewis and Clark, you take 10 inmates right off the table right now.
And they open in August.
Yeah, and then the other is, Carbon County, I mean, I'm sure they're gonna probably move forward with their thing. We average 5 inmates theirs, we only have 1 right now. I'm trying to get Stillwater County to come this way to help us out when we lose Lewis and Clark County. But with Carbon County building their jail, they've already discussed they'll probably be, it's smarter for them to drive, 50 miles down the road versus, the 100 and something, so we'll lose that. And then with the justice reform, it's less and less inmates from the state and more coming in on Broadwater County tax dollars.
So Bill Chiraki's, one of his recommendations was what?
It's mill levy.
Bill levy. Go out for a public safety bill levy, correct?
Yes.
That was his recommendation, and that was one of the reasons for hiring, because we all said that we need that. We needed a third-party person to make that recommendation as well, right? So, I mean, that's where we're at. I guess I hope that everybody understands that. We can take all the mills from the rest of the county departments, but where does that leave us, right? I mean, Broadwater County is one big bus. We start taking off the wheels of it, what do we have? We have to keep it all going.
Yeah, and I don't want anybody to sit here and think that at the sheriff's office, we're asking for, everybody's funding to be cut away, but I think where we start having a lot of gripe and heartburn is that, our people have been asking for market wage adjustments for 3 years, and it's been told, well, it's union contract, then we can't do it because we can't afford it, but then other people in the county are able to do it not only once, not that they don't deserve it, but it's frustrating when we know there's an issue at hiring people at $14 an hour to do a job that's dangerous, that you're stuck in a building all day dealing with people that don't want to be there. And, we keep kicking the can and not doing anything to fix it. I guess that's all we have to say from the sheriff's office.
Yep.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks, Brandon.
Could I just add one final thing to that? So I think the thing that I didn't really understand, and kind of grown into this over several years, is that those dispatchers and detention officers are so critical to this whole thing. And that if we lose dispatchers because we're not paying them enough, it's a super high stress job, and they're working shifts and things that are, I mean, they can get a much less demanding job for more money without looking very far. And so if we're not paying them enough and we are losing dispatchers, we really lose the ability to operate a sheriff's office and an emergency response across the whole spectrum, fire, ambulance, you name it. That's essential. The second thing is that if we don't have sufficient detention officers to meet with all the standards that have to be met as far as how many are on, male, female, etc., the training that they have, and we have to shut down that jail, or we have to pull in officers off the street to run it, we find ourselves getting farther and farther behind this problem. If we get to the point where we have to shut down the jail because we can't man it, then the wheels are going to fall off of the whole county's budget. So it's not a matter of they're being selfish and so take from somewhere else. It's a matter of if we can't sustain it, we are literally killing the goose that lays the golden egg. And it'll be very, very hard to reopen that. Because when you start closing down jails and you start laying off employees, they're going somewhere else. And they're trained where to go through a reopening even if the money's there. And I think this is the year, of all the years that we've been here, this is the year when the commission, you have the room to make some changes to start moving in the right direction. And if we've got the money for a 3.9% COLA, and we've got the money to give market wage adjustments in various places and other places that are not as acute in need as then we have the room this year to start taking some incremental steps in the right direction, and this budget doesn't do that. This budget needs to start making a little more of a commitment to mills. We're not, I mean, I don't think anyone's asking for, at least I don't hear that, a wholesale adaptation and boom, we're all mills and the revenue goes somewhere else. But start making some incremental changes towards reliance on mills more and reliance on jail revenue less. The revenue may still come in, but now you have extra revenue that you can use for targeted improvements here and there. That's an example. The second example is a little more revenue in order to get a market wage adjustment, to keep dispatchers, to keep detention officers that are trained, that it costs a little bit to keep them and it costs a whole lot more to replace them. Those are the incremental changes that you have the ability to make right now with this year's budget, because this year's budget we actually have a little bit of extra revenue, and that's not happening. And so I'm a little frustrated because, yeah, maybe we can kick this down the road one more year, but and maybe the impact of Lewis and Clark County's jail opening is going to be less than everyone fears, but there's going to be an impact. And then if we're looking at a Carbon County jail, I'm sure it's not built tomorrow. Maybe it's 2 years down the road before it's built. But we have to be, if we have a long-term plan, if we have a 5 years out goal of where we want to get, this year, this budget is the perfect opportunity to take some incremental steps in that direction. And we're going the other direction. And we can't just say, oh, we're going to trust the public for a mill levy. The school district's going to do a mill levy. We know they're going to do a mill levy. And the public is, in this county, is not in favor of repeatedly passing mill levies to say, increase my property taxes. That kind of overall big picture, make incremental steps towards a goal and work together, it's frustrating because this year we have the chance to do it and we're not doing it. And I'm worried about the cost we're gonna pay down the road. We're gonna look back and say, gosh, we should have done things differently. Thus endeth my speech.
Any other public comment? Tim?
Tim with Redoubt News, just real quick, I have to concur with our county attorney on one point that he made, well, pretty much everything, but in the budget process for the last 15 years that I've been following it, the draft process is really hard to get the full picture in order to understand where things are headed. Here just a few weeks ago, a full discussion was made. We asked for a copy of what was being discussed, and it took some doing to get a copy of that after the fact. So again, looking forward to transparency, helps you guys get the job done as well as helps the public make sure that they know what's going on. Thank you.
Any other public comment? So we'll close the hearing and move on to the decision to adopt the fiscal year 2020 county budget.
I think at this point, everything that's been discussed can certainly be, I think what we need is a working group for part of it. There's some things we can illuminate, which I think we should have a discussion. But in the meantime, we are required by law to adopt the budget today. So with that, I would move that we adopt the budget as we have it, as presented.
Is there a second?
I guess I've got a couple of questions before we go any further. So Debbie, tell us, where is there room in our current budget to provide more for our sheriff's department? Is there?
There isn't,
Okay,
unless unless you deplete all your PILT funds.
Okay.
And then nobody can come the rest of the year and say, can you help us? Unexpected things go up, printers, copiers, equipment to do our jobs. Not for the dollar value they need.
Is there enough there to at least balance their budget, the $20,000, almost $23,000 that they're short now? That they don't have to cut
Well, that's
quarter
what
deputy
bringing
salary.
Brandon at the last little bit. There is some savings in some of the staff leaving. Those savings that we aren't spending right now, we'll get them through. They are balanced, didn't even touch their cash reserves. I don't have a magic rabbit to pull out of my hat. I
I
haven't
understand it.
cut sheriff's office, who other staff do you cut? I mean, it's across the board.
I guess that's the point I'm trying to make.
It's across the board. So who do you decide all the positions that need cut to save, to give to those that are still here, putting overtime in, working more hours than they need to? It's gonna come down to a mill, a permanent mill for the sheriff's office. They're gonna need it, if nothing else, to offset their operations. People keep saying they want their safety, what are they willing to pay? I don't have other options. That's the legal way, I guess, for us to pay. And we can't keep up with Lewis and Clark and Gallatin County and be stuck in the middle. We're gonna have to keep up and do like for like and find ways to generate that. If that means our taxes go up, unfortunately. I'm a taxpayer too, my family's a taxpayer. It hits us all.
Debbie, I also have a question. Is there any money taken from the revenue made in the detention center to use anywhere other than public safety, law
No.
enforcement?
No,
Thank you.
it's specific to the public safety fund to operate all their needs,
And just those needs?
and just those needs.
Do we have 25,000 in PILT that we can transfer, that we can take out of PILT and put in the sheriff's office so we don't, because if we cut this deputy, it's gonna cost us twice as much to get one retrained.
Well, I think there were some items that you had talked about funding, veterans burial, indigent burial, that you were talking about maybe not needing this year. Not sure what the sale of the hospital, how the ambulance, and some of that's gonna work out, if you needed to give money for the ambulance fund. So there's some, I think there's some unknowns is there as well, that if we need to, it could be done.
But is the question that there's a cut to a deputy? There's a vacancy, there's not a cut to a deputy, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess yes and no. Cause the problem is you cut 22,000 out of our budget this year, you know, we have to come up with that next year. It's not, we're gonna be able to hire a quarter of a deputy for a year. The other issue is we tend to have a lot of vacancy savings throughout the year because we have so many people leave, and I agree with that, and Debbie helps me out with that all the time on, you know, how we make that up in our funding. But I'm a little concerned about what's happening at the federal government level with the Bureau of Reclamation contract as well. And Lewis and Clark has the same concerns, so there might be some issues happening there and some cuts that are gonna trickle down that, so it is cutting a deputy. Yeah, we could make it up for it in vacancy savings, you know, for 22,000, but if I hire that person, is the funding gonna be there next year? Because I had to cut it this year, most likely it's not, I'd have to find that money somewhere else. So I would call it cutting a quarter position off is what you'd have to call it.
I mean, I guess we've asked you to start your year with a balanced budget, and already we've put you in a deficit because of some mistakes that we didn't anticipate, right, that were made.
Yeah, and one of the other questions was, with jail revenue was absolutely my mistake when it got, and I just didn't see it until Debbie sent it back on her paperwork. And then I'm going, well, what is that? Well, it looks differently on ours, and that was that the state jail revenue. That's my mistake. I own that one. There is another revenue in there of $11,000 that we did discuss, that it's not a check coming back, that's the Zerker payment that was in there, so we cut that out of it. So after we make those cuts and adjustments, decrease the mills to from the 37.39 or something to the 36.08, it left us at the deficit. So, and then when you call it the 11th hour, here we are, making changes, and we've got to trim 22,000 off. So.
Debbie, what was the increase in value for the mills for the sheriff's office, aside from the lost mills? What was the increase just in the value of those mills this year?
It was like 35,000 or something, 36.
Yeah, an
Okay.
additional 35,661.
35 what?
Additional revenue of 35,661.
5,661. Thank you.
What is the amount of PILT money that we have currently?
At the end of June, there was 574,000. And because we don't know what it is yet, we're guessing the low four-year average of 630,000 anticipated this next year.
And do we have a number on how much of that we have committed?
I don't have my PILT worksheet, but your last worksheet, I think, showed 657,000, 58,000?
628, does that sound right?
Close, right up in there.
And was all of last fiscal year spent, the 574,000, was that all utilized?
Well, that's the end of cash. I wouldn't say that was utilized. That's what they had in reserves. But part of that has to do with the final payment of the arrangements they had down at Wheatland turn lanes that they had loaned when the contractor went belly up. So some of that they got back, which is part of some of that increase. 100,000 or something like that. So they have a little more this year with that. And normally the balance is about down to 300,000.
One thing we don't have on the agenda is PILT allocations. So if we do want to have a discussion about using PILT to balance a budget, which is not something we've used PILT for in the past, we can certainly have that, but we need to have it on the agenda. And then what we can do is ask Debbie to do a budget amendment. We do those every quarter anyway, it's part of doing business. So it's something we can talk about, but it can't be a part of today's budget.
Yeah, I think we need to
Corey, I have a
I
question
think
on
we need
that.
to have that discussion then.
Corey. Go ahead, Corey.
So does this current budget include use of PILT for any line items, this expenditure report?
I believe it does.
Okay, I mean, if it's part of the budget, you can amend in your course of your adoption and discussion, you can amend it. If it's already included in the budget. If it's a separate deal that has to be done separately, then Commissioner Overt's right. But if you're already allocating PILT in this as part of your budget, you're probably okay to make an amendment. I guess the other thing, I did look up the statute last night. The deadline for your budget is the first Thursday after the first Tuesday in September, or 30 days after receiving your mill valuations, whichever is later.
And that is today.
No, the first Thursday after the first Tuesday, so it's Thursday the 5th is your deadline.
Debbie, can you
Or
step in
within
on
30
that?
days. And we
Right.
got them 30 days ago.
I don't have my
Yeah, so it's
memo,
the
but
later,
doesn't it
it's
say
the later
whichever?
of either 30 days after you receive your mill valuations or this coming Thursday.
What's the statute number, Corey? I have my law book in front of
It's like 7-6-4005, somewhere in that arena. Somewhere between 4001 and 4010. It's on the right-hand page. I can't remember the exact statute.
You're not taking us back into September or October though, correct, Corey?
Take it. Say again. I didn't hear all that.
Last year you had tried to tell us we could amend, or we could adopt the budget in October. You're still talking about this immediate time, just within a day or two, correct?
I don't think that's what I said last year. I don't recall the exact conversation, but the statute that I read last night says the deadline is the first Thursday after the first Tuesday in September, or 30 days after you receive your mill valuations, whichever is later.
It doesn't. No, it says. Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, so, or within 30 days, so it's either today or whatever that would be, yeah, Thursday, the 5th. In which case, we haven't posted, so, I'm not sure that that would be wise, but it's a solid budget. We've gone through this process starting, in March? If we wanna do a budget amendment, we can, after having a lengthy discussion about changing the use of PILT to balance budgets. We have a long-term plan that Bill Jarocki helped with. We can certainly also talk about that, but I do think those things should be on an agenda. We can call it a working meeting, we can put together a working group. But we can't just do it off the fly, it has to be agended.
So there's a motion on the table to approve the budget as presented. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second the motion, but I really do believe we need to have that working meeting so that we can get this sorted out. It's not fair for these guys to start their budget in a deficit. And I wanna make sure that we can do whatever, everything we can for them.
The motion's been made and seconded to approve the budget as presented. Is there any further discussion? I would say that I would approve the budget, but I think that we need to have the meeting with the discussion of PIL in order, because I think we need to at least supplement their budget with 25,000, because like Brandon said, that's something that by the time you get done looking through 99 pages of revenue and 115 pages of expenditure, I don't know how you're expected to hit everything. And I think that's what happens, is we get flooded with a bunch of stuff at the last minute. But I think it's pertinent that we approve a budget.
And on that last minute thing, Debbie, didn't you have this posted in the clerk and recorder's office for 2 weeks? You had it up there for anybody to review. So what you sent out to us was the last minute updates, but not necessarily, what was it you sent out to us? Just what you have there that was in the clerk and recorder's office for 2 weeks prior to today.
Just some minor corrections, 2 mathematical errors, last minute, like today, last minute with Brandon, things that got missed in discussions.
And that was more communication than anything else.
So I have a question.
So I think it's important to note, for us to understand, all this information, the 99 pages, that was available for 2 weeks. It wasn't a last minute thing. That last minute's been repeated today, but it is not accurate. Thank you, Debbie.
I have a question then. The email that went out, and I printed it all and took it home. I received Friday at 4:30. Was that the exact same thing in the book, or you said there were minor changes?
I didn't say that, no.
Oh.
But yeah, that paperwork you're holding in your hand has been in the clerk and recorder's office for 2
Exactly the
weeks.
same.
No, there were minor, and correct
So
me
there
if
were
I'm
minor
wrong.
And just a few, just those changes on a page-by-page basis
Right, so there were some minor changes.
in the book.
Right, so the book is slightly different.
No, it's the same as that, because as these were fixed, that was done, this was fixed, so this matched that when I sent it, because what was final and sent was at the last minute, to make sure it was the same as the book. So it's been printed for 2 weeks, so if there was a change in the book, it was already in that report that was emailed. I just had it printed off in the book, so page by page that was changed was just a page, so they're the same.
So when were the minor changes?
I'm more confused than when I started.
Because you said that they were minor
This
changes.
book has been up there. If there was a change, it was a page to fix a mathematical error.
Which was on Friday, is
Which
what
was
was
on
sent.
Friday or before as I worked on it, to make sure it was all done.
So what is right there, which is what was in the book, is different from Friday because the changes
No, because
were-
Friday is what's in this book. They were both updated. Before, this book has been up there for 2 weeks.
I understand.
Okay. All the pages have not been replaced, just some of them,
When?
when I did updates
And that was when?
over the 2 weeks.
So within
So
2
I did not
weeks-
send this to everybody until I was sure all the updates were in the book, so I could send that out and I didn't miss any. So I did them, they've been sitting out there for 2 weeks
the up-
online, but they have been in this book as the adjustments have been made.
So what she has in her hand,
Should match this,
but that, what was in her hand is Friday.
right? So I had till Friday to get this stuff in the book, make sure it was all right.
I don't understand the whole,
It's like editing a book, there's always edits until you print the final. That's the final,
which was Friday,
which is Friday.
not 2 weeks ago.
This is the 30th.
Mike, this is getting a little bit badgering. Let me just clarify. Debbie, can you please tell us, has the book been in the clerk and recorder's office for 2 weeks?
Yes, it has.
Did you make minor edits
Minor
to it
edits.
as you found mathematical errors?
And
Okay.
replaced a page
And
as
then,
needed.
and then you sent out the final on Friday, so anybody who wanted to could print it out for themselves rather
And it
than,
would be the
go
same
to
as
the
what's
clerk
in the
and
meeting that
recorder's
was
office.
emailed Friday.
okay, I think it's pretty clear. Thank you very much.
So I guess we'll call for the question. Is, all in favor of approving the budget as posted?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to our 10:30 at 11:30.
Can we sign the resolutions to that effect? I think there's two. Debbie, do you have the originals?
All the attachments.
Commissioners, I'm gonna hang up now, if that's okay with you.
Thank you, Corey.
Thanks, Corey.
I would definitely volunteer to be on any budget working group that's working on this throughout the year.
All right, we'll take you up on that.
Okay, take care, bye.
I think one other clarification as we're signing, the, I do recall Corey's memo that he wanted the excess money, not excess, the repayment to go to paying for that computer program. That repayment is from where he was overpaid salary, or was paid by both National Guard and the county, but the law only allows it up to 120 days per year. So he's repaying the excess back to the county where he was overpaid. And I think that's a pretty easy budget amendment we can do. So I would support that.
10:30, Mike Koehnke, BLM Spokane Hills Communication Site Lease Agreement.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, we have up Spokane Hills a beacon that the Highway Department, Aeronautics Division wants to get rid of. They want to give that tower to Broadwater County government. The reason for that is we have repeaters up there for law enforcement, fire, and public works. And we have a lease agreement with the BLM. We have 2 copies here. Each copy needs to be signed. And we've been negotiating this for some time. And let's see, any questions?
Does your lease agreement have the month of August put in that first line?
Nope. We didn't get electronic copies. We just got hard copies. We have to cross that out and put today's date in there and then sign the back of it.
And I noticed too under section 3 that we cannot lease that to any commercial customers or tenants.
That is correct. Cannot do that.
Can we lease space on it to any commercial people?
No, we may not. All we can do is have public safety, emergency communications on that site. If we're gonna lease that site or they wanna put commercial operations on there, then the Bureau of Land Management has to do an EIS study to affect that. This is an existing facility. We've had repeaters up there since 1999. And since then, the Lewis and Clark County Sheriff's Office has added one. They call it their Spokane Hills Beacon, or repeater. That's for the rural fire district. The FCC licenses we have are all in the name of Broadwater County government. That's fire district, fire and ambulance. That's the Sheriff's Office, and that's the road department. And the one they have for Lewis and Clark County is in the name of the Lewis and Clark County Sheriff's Office. Those are public safety frequencies. No, they do not want to lease that site for commercial use.
Okay.
There's a little bit lower on down, there's several sites down there that are actually privately owned. A chunk of land is actually owned. McMaster sold that to those communications facilities. Some was like Northwest Energy, BLM, the railroads, MRL, and then there's a couple telecommunications companies down on those 2 sites lower. But those were put in place before McMaster's donated that land to the Bureau of Land Management.
Also noticed there that by October 15th each year, we have to provide them a list of all the tenants and customers of the facility. Is that something that you're going to do, or who's going to take up that responsibility?
We can make that part of my responsibility if you want to, or we can have Capital Communications do that. They're the ones that keep our licenses up for all those frequencies that we have. I think Gary'd like to do that. I haven't talked to him, discussed that with him.
All right. Just, I guess, so we don't overlook that.
Sure, absolutely. They just wanna make sure we're not, we can add more public safety repeaters up there, but we can't add anything else.
I think as far as for discussion at a later time, you discuss as a commission, whether we're gonna keep that beacon lighted or not. And how that's gonna go, that's for another time.
That's for another time, correct. Right now, the power is in Northwest Energy, power is in the name of Aeronautics Division. They want to transfer that meter usage jobs. I sent an email out, you probably got copies this morning, seeing what estimate that would be, what the cost per month. They just recently changed, I think about 9 months ago, changed everything from down to LED bulbs, which is very high efficient. And same with our radio repeaters and stuff are efficient. We also have a backup system that has solar. It's already up there, it's on that plan on the back page, our solar panels.
Was there wind power as well?
I don't think there's any wind power, but there are some backup batteries, kind of a UPS system, or, a backup system batteries. Gary, Capital Communications services that site for all of us, for both Broadwater County and Wilson Clark County, as well as takes care of the licensing and stuff for the FCC licenses.
Is there any other discussion, any other comments?
This is a great opportunity. I move we sign and proceed.
No, second.
Motion's been made and second to sign an agreement with Bureau of Land Management for the lease on the communications tower to run from 2018 and it expires in 2048, I believe.
That's correct, December 30th, 2048.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same, motion carries. You got the ones you want signed, Mike?
Yes. Any of those that I gave you, you can sign. You can sign this one here, any of those would be fine. And then I'll scan it, and we'll have a copy of it, and then of course, we can mail it, and they want us to mail it to them rather than electronic transfer.
Why did you staple both ends of this?
Oh, I don't know. She did. There's that copy up there. I didn't want you to get it. Secret copy. We got budget items in there. For education.
How many batteries do they have for backup?
They just have just regular batteries that are 12-volt batteries.
Oh, just regular ones?
Just regular batteries in a series hooked up. It charges up during the day, trip charges it. Then if they lose power, then it draws off those batteries or the solar. Of course, at night, there's no solar, so that's what the batteries are for.
How often do they replace those then?
I don't know, the cycle's probably about every 5 years. We have a contract with Capital Communications to do all that for us. Take care of that, there's a regular cycle. When they want to recharge batteries, they usually give us a budget item.
Have something small before we move on, if that's okay. Have something small before we go on to the next agenda item, if that's okay.
Okay.
So, thanks, Mike. This is something we already voted on, probably a good month ago. I was able to recuse myself, thanks, Daryl. But I do, just to be on the safe side, want to read my statement of disclosure, just so that there's absolutely no confusion. And I've done this throughout the process, but there's no conflict of interest between my volunteer work for Broadwater County and citizens and my duty as a county commissioner. My involvement with my community is comparable to other county commissioners. Throughout Montana, I receive no personal monetary gain from working with Broadwater County Development Corp. Townsend Area Chamber of Commerce, Auxiliary, Rotary, Montana Board of Crime Control, Youth Justice Council, Area 4 Agency on Aging, County Board of Printing, or any other organization that offers services to the citizens of Broadwater County. I do not own a business or such property. I do not rent or lease any property or assets to any business. The best way to be an effective county commissioner is to be involved. Montana Association of Counties, MACO, has committees that support this work. Economic Development Committee, Health and Human Services Committee, among others. MCA 762527 and MCA 95112 support commissioners' involvement. My husband is Executive Director of Montana Business Assistance Connection, and MBAC is Broadwater County Certified Regional Development Corp. And our federal economic development agency, and has been since 2004. In fact, Broadwater County has been involved with and complied with the Public Works and Economic Development Act of 1965. Broadwater County, which is before I was born. Broadwater County contributes an annual equivalent of 1 mil to receive services by both EDA and CRDC, as is required for that assistance. That 1 mil equates to less than 3%, it's actually 1% now of MBAC's operating budget. That 1 mil is not paid to Brian Obert. MBAC derives its funding from many sources, including EDA, CRDC, interest-bearing revolving loan funds, grants, state contracts, and membership from local businesses and governments, city and counties, including Lewis and Clark and Mark counties, Augusta, East Helena, Helena, Lincoln, Townsend, and White Sulphur Springs. But the benefits to Broadwater County are far more than that mill. There is no conflict of interest. Thank you for indulging me on that, just to be on the safe side.
Just a quick question, Commissioner Obert, that disclosure today, does that relate to the adopted budget? And that's why it's brought up today out of...
Yeah, anything with that was actually adopted previously, but
Understand, but
I just want to be on the safe
for
side.
today's meeting.
Mhm. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so next, Mike Koehnke, MSU School of Architectural Design Contract for Wheatland Emergency Service.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, we are interested in using the services of Montana State University School of Architecture. They have a community design center over there, and they did some work for us earlier in first of this year, first of June. 2 graduate students came here and did some conceptual design work for an ambulance building for Broadwater County. Just a concept, in case we want to go get funding for that building. We can do the same thing now down in southern Broadwater County. We're interested in building a southern Broadwater County Emergency Services building, which would include a law enforcement, like a substation, with some bays for the Three Forks Rural Fire District in that area, and the ambulance service. And this is a contract that's put together by the university. I'd like to have you look at it. And I think there's a cost. They're going to charge us this time around $2,500. I don't have that money in my budget. I think you talked about one time about using some money. You had PELT money in a turn lane. Yes, I'm not too sure what that is.
Yeah, that's correct.
Any questions on this?
No.
I think Corey had a bunch of questions earlier, and they addressed those in that memo. I emailed it to you. Also gave you hard copies this morning in your desk to look at that. I think they've addressed all those.
Yeah, I think those answered satisfactorily, at least from my standpoint.
Those questions were mainly dealing with, are we gonna have a seal on our plans from an architect? Well, these are just concept plans. We're not doing plumbing and electricity and all that kind of stuff. So it isn't a requirement.
It's just a schematic drawing.
Yep.
And they'll create a 3D model, will they?
Yep, just like we did, and they'll come up with some cost estimates like that. And then we'll use that material to go apply for grants, like USDA, Home Rural Development grants, or anybody, railroad, or anybody's got money.
So then the latest email you sent us was asking whether they wanted to do that this fall or do it in January. Is there a preference on their part, or?
They've assigned 3 students to us. We're gonna meet with them this Friday. If you sign this agreement, I'm gonna meet them down there at Three Forks, look at the lot, gonna bring them up here to the detention center to talk to the sheriff's office. And then we're gonna meet with them the following Friday. We have an arrangement with the emergency services group. It's a meeting down in Three Forks with the sheriff's office, or Three Forks Fire, ambulance service down in that area. And they're come to that meeting at 4 o'clock. That's down there in the ambulance building. I think, what's the date on, 13th, 14th, I don't know what date that is. Let's see, that's gonna be down there on the 13th, 4 o'clock, 3 Forks. Those students are gonna come down to that. If you do not sign this, well then they'll take those 3 students and assign them to a different project. Just a graduate project for them. One of the assignments they have is to go out into the community and actually design something for a community that needs to be done, some deficiency somewhere. And the purpose of the drawings is then that community can use those to go out and ask for grants, sell it to the community, and as well as build relationships with the different partners. Our stakeholders are gonna be sheriff's office, fire and ambulance in that community down there.
I think it's a great way to, an inexpensive way for us to accomplish all those things. Apply for those grants. I guess I would move that we sign this, memo for services between Broadwater County and the University of Montana School of Architecture.
I'll second that motion. This is a great project, Mike. Thank you.
A motion been made, second to approve the contract with the MSU Community Design Center, is that what they are?
Yes.
Broadwater County for the emergency services building in the wheatland area. Is any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried.
Contracts are stapled on the top.
Oh. That was stapled on top, but it was also stapled on the bottom.
I know that machine did. Blame the machine.
Excuse me, so the cost, Mike, excuse me, Mr. Chair, is coming out of the turn lanes then?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Just concepts and ideas, but something
I know you run behind schedule, that's all I have, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You bet.
Thanks, Mike.
I'll scan these a little bit later.
Okay, next up, the Elkhorn Restoration Committee support change of scope.
So I've been giving you guys ongoing updates on the change. I was going to bring you an email and I forgot to print it. But we do have Al sitting here. Al, would you give an update? You are by far the brains, one of the brains behind this and the most knowledgeable. I'll butcher it. Would you give us an update so that everybody understands what's going on and what the benefits of the project are?
Sure. The Elkhorn Restoration Committee has been active in the Elkhorns since 2012 as a citizens collaborative group. We've worked with the Forest Service, the BLM, and a lot of private landowners about trying to restore the Elkhorns from the standpoint of a fire resilient community in support of the wildlife habitat components out there, since it is a wildlife management area. And so we've been very active, worked with the Forest Service over a lot of projects. We, as a group, we intervened in some decisions by the agencies. We have signed on as an amicus, a friend of the court, for a BLM decision. So we've been very active out there. Several times the agencies have come to us and asked us if we would be interested in expanding our area of support. And we said no, we came together to do things in the Elkhorns, and that's kind of what we did. Well, the national agency priorities are such now that we're not getting much work done in the Elkhorns, quite frankly. I mean, there's fire and fuels work. We're not getting the wildlife habitat component work done. And so we've been faced with the issue of, well, what do we do as a collaborative group then? Do we stay active? Do we go into recess? Or do we just go away? So through these past probably 5 months now, we've been engaged with a discussion about expanding our footprint of collaboration. And so we, as a committee, voted unanimously, all of our membership, to expand our footprint and include now the Big Belts, the Elkhorns, and what's called the Divide Country. So that basically takes all the National Forest land from Interstate 15 over to the Spotted Dog Country. So as a collaborative, we have decided to do that. And as part of that, we are working with the Forest Service on a large landscape proposal that we have submitted our application to go through the first review process, and we should know the answer on that Friday. If we are selected, then we will go into competition at the national level. So our proposals then will be, we'll have the opportunity to go into a lot of detail over what we want to do in this. And those will go to a national level committee for selection. They'll select up to 10 projects across the country. And if that happens, we will be in line to pick up quite a bit of funding. We being the Forest Service, they're the agency, they're the lead agency on it. We're working in support of them. If it goes like it did previously, then these projects are 10-year projects, and we will be heavily involved in a lot of activity from Spotted Dog to the north end of the belts. So our Elkhorn Restoration Committee no longer exists. We voted to change our name. We are now the Big Elk Divide. So you take the big off the big belts, the elk off the Elkhorns, divide off the Divide Country, put it together. That is our Big Elk Divide Restoration Committee. We kept restoration because it's important to us for the work we do. And so that's what we did. We're asking all the counties to give us a letter of support for the kind of work we do in the landscape now that we are working on. Since it's much bigger, we will be involved in 5 counties. And we want those so that as we, you almost get a step ahead, as we prepare for our second round of information going to the Washington office for consideration, we want to build a profile of support so that they see the kind of support we get. So this is kind of an informational thing of letting you know what's going on, but also we would like a letter of support to that, to the collaborative, and certainly to the Forest Service, the Helena Lewis Clark National Forest, in support of this kind of work. Nothing, I mean, there's nothing specific. We have, you know, big lists of projects and all those kind of things and stuff, but that's we're asking you to be conceptually supportive of what we're doing with this landscape approach. So, questions?
Thanks, Al.
Thanks, Al.
Thank you. Okay.
So to remind you guys, the amicus brief that we did, we got a grant with the Mako Forested Counties Coalition to support the logging project on Johnny Crow. That was connected with the Elkhorn Restoration Committee, now to be the Big Elk Divide Restoration Committee. We had a second friend of the court, support for Iron Mask, and when you go to the Forested Counties Coalition meeting, one of the things that's talked about is the thing that's had the most success fighting the anti-anything to do in the forest, the single stamp of the 11th hour letters, has been active collaboratives. So this is just an extension of or a growth of our collaborative. So with Al here, do you guys have any questions for him or for me? Are you supportive of changing the scope to this larger collaborative and working on a letter of support.
I would be yes.
Yes, and we'll include the Forest Service in there as well, to that previous letter.
It would be addressed to them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, we'll have a letter next week, Al, and get that to the group.
Thank you. I'll let them know.
Thank you for the explanation.
Okay, 10:45, Virgil Binky Chair, Trust Board, present request for grant for Silos Area Master.
The trust board approved the grant request. It was corrected in the meeting for, not for the 45,000, but it was over what the plan was, so that was adjusted in the meeting, and we moved it forward. The other option we had was to send it back, ask for a correction, and that would have taken time, so that's why it went that way. Speed things up so we can get things moving forward. The other issue, which was discussed, was the liability and the lease on the campground. And with that, I would like to have Steve McCullough make the presentation on the reason, because he's more familiar with it than I am. So, Steve?
Virgil, before
Yes, ma'am.
we go to Steve, what was over the plan? You said that you only funded a portion because it was over
Yeah, in other
what the
words,
plan was?
It was over what was requested
Requested
for the cost to do the job.
Mhm.
Okay, if we'd have gone for the 45, there would have been loose cash. And so we wanted to make sure there was adequate funds to cover the request.
Virgil, is that based on the money that they've already had donated to them, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So somebody would have asked the question, so we tried to move it so it was done correctly. I have one other suggestion, that when you you're ready to go to contract, make sure you have avenues to the funds that other groups have done, so that when the contract requires payments necessary, you have the funds to take care of it.
So the request was only for 32, it wasn't for 45,000,
Correct.
correct? Okay, thank you.
Okay, Steve.
Debbie will read the decision of the trust board.
You have a copy of it, just to read it for the public. The Broadwater Trust Board has voted to approve a grant for the Citizens Action Group for Silos area for $32,000 on the condition that the current contract between Broadwater County and BOR be canceled or renegotiated. Broadwater County Trust Board supports the need for a master plan at the Silos Recreation Area, urges the commissioners to approve this grant.
The elephant in the room was, why would we put a condition on it? And we're back to that. The trust board received a request like this years ago, and we funded it. And Kim thinks it was about 54,000. We covered half of that. And sure enough, we had local support from Duro Rec, said, you get this study done, we'll get some improvements out there. It went back to Denver. We funded it, did the study. Study came back with Goose Bay type improvements, electricity at the sites, new gazebos, showers, really nice stuff. We did the study, got it done, got it completed, went to Denver, and Denver said, the Bureau Rec lease with the county is the county's responsibility. Got no money and no improvements. Here we are, how many years later, we're gonna do the study again. And the old thing is, do the same thing and expect a different decision. it'd be a waste of money. So that's why we put that condition in there. You need a partner with Bureau Rec. You do not need to be the lead agency on the cost out there. That's the number one part. The second part is that lease puts all of the cost and liability, and liability is the big stuff, on the county out there. If the boy that was killed on the north end of the lake, when a stored ramp fell on him, that could have been Broadwater County. We had stored ramps out there also. They've since been replaced, but that could have been our responsibility. Because of the lease, it's our county taxpayers' responsibility. It's a terrible lease. So we put the condition in there. Questions?
So is all the liability out there right now is the county's?
County first. They'll name the Bureau of Rec, because that's even a bigger pocket than our taxpayers.
So if we cancel or get out of that lease, how does that hinder the citizens, does that hinder the trust board or the Citizens Action Group from participating out there as far as funding goes, with the translation with the BOR, or?
No, I think it enhances it. I think it puts them in a better position to negotiate with the Bureau of Rec, and the Trust Board would like to participate in that. If we're gonna get some enhancements out there, we wanna help.
So what would the county's function be?
You're the facilitator on it. We're strictly the secondary vote that authorizes trust fund funds. The county technically is the lead organization in this. The study, you're doing the study. You're signing off. Bureau Rec is gonna do it. It's your study. It's Broadwater County study.
The Broadwater County also would be basically a pass-through organization for other grants or funding, correct?
Absolutely.
So what would happen to that if the county got out completely? We would no longer have the concessionaire contract.
You reduce your exposure substantially, 100%. That facility generally runs in the red, so you'd quit putting tax dollars in there. So it's a win-win to get out of it. We feel negligent from the trust board standpoint. We entered into that agreement. We had the county enter into it so the trust board could put the bay in. We excavated the bay, we put the boat ramps in, we put the boat slips in, we did all of that. We had you take on the lease. We anticipated the lease, we'd give it back in 2 or 3 years. It was not given back. The lease was not canceled and given back to Bureau of Rec. So we put you in this position, you need to cancel it and get out of it.
It was 2003, is that right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Been a long time.
Yeah, so things have changed, and it makes sense for us to look at renegotiating that lease for sure.
Mm-hmm. That's your call. That's why our initial motion was to get out of the lease. If you can make Bureau Rec a partner in this and remove your taxpayer liability, may not be a bad thing. And probably be good from the Citizen Action Group position too.
So we renegotiate, we would not be responsible for, right now we're responsible for weeds and roads. And we're paying the power bill. So does that all go back, that would all go back to BOR? We would just completely walk away from the system, or how would we be involved as far as us and the Citizens Action and the BOR goes?
Actually, Citizen Action has nothing to do with this. It's the county and BOR. You go to the BOR and you say, we're either getting out of the lease entirely, or let's renegotiate it, and you put in whatever you'd like to do. You can say, we'll do the roads, but you pay us for it. They're your roads. We have a weed district. We'll spray the weeds, but you pay us for it. Liability is a Bureau Rec facility, is Bureau Rec liability. Personally, I would get out of being the concessionaire. That way you don't have to sublet being the concessionaire. I'd get out of that part, let Bureau Rec put that up for leases, and that also gets you out of the expenses you're paying out there for maintenance and lights, and et cetera, et cetera. I dump that back on Bureau Rec. But that contract's up to negotiations. You can do as good a negotiating as you want or as poorly as you want. That's certainly up to you guys. We didn't put stipulations in there. We trust you'll do a good job.
And I guess, oh wait,
Yeah, for the commission, over the years, the trust board, as well as the commission, have put in close to $800,000 in that complex. That's county money, so just for the record, so people understand, we do have an interest in it, a substantial one. The issue is, we don't have the funds to develop it. You're looking at a $10 million job to bring it up to what it is in Goose Bay.
there's a couple of pieces, and Dan, I might ask you a couple questions if that's all okay. I understand you may not have the answers off the fly. But I don't think the master plan, I know the master plan that's been put together thus far is not for a repeat of Goose Bay. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
All right, thank you. I think it's nice to have Goose Bay, and then I think it's nice to have silos, because we have both campers, both camper types, those that want first class and those that want to be a little bit more rustic and free. So I think that's important to keep in mind. Also, we went through a very lengthy process at the direction of the trust board to gain local control of our golf course, softball fields, Old Poor Farm, and Rod and Gun Club. That's important, the local control. When we do talk with the BOR and renegotiate or get back into the contracts, we could not have done that until January. There was just too much hostility on the subject for whatever reason. And then you can't do that right before somebody's starting the season. So we've already agreed to do this in the fall. BOR has been gracious enough to agree. So we have that on our plans. And it's a good idea for both sides. But to even talk about dropping local control without engaging the public has me extremely concerned. We have the #1 Lund seller this side of the Mississippi here in Townsend. He's got over a handful of employees with families that live here that rely on that business for their livelihood. I don't think we want to ditch them. If you drive through this county on a Saturday or Sunday and any weekend, even this summer that hasn't had great weekends, you cannot count the number of campers and boats at Bob's and the gas stations. And I know we have solid numbers coming, I don't have those off the top of my head, but we do not want to ditch local control. As far as the liability questions, I think we need to rely on Julie for that, and Mako, who's our insurance carrier. I think we all have assumptions to be made when it comes to liability, but I don't think we can make any decisions based on assumptions. We need to get the experts in here and get them to tell us what the realities are of that issue. Oh, Dan, my question for you. You had stated before that there are grants out there for a lot of the work that needs to be done at silos, to kind of bring it up again. And we are more apt to get those if we have a partnership. Steve mentioned that we do need a partnership. I appreciate that very much. Can you speak to those grants for us? Again, I understand if you
I'm
can't.
not sure if I don't think I've ever said that.
Maybe it was the other Dan.
Maybe it was Dan Shermcat.
Oh, okay, sorry about that.
I don't want to speak for him.
Other Dan.
All right, well, maybe that's something we can talk about when we
Yeah.
come together, and those will be public meetings so that the public who rely and recreate at silos have an opportunity to have their voices heard. I understand these discussions were not on the agenda, and they should have been, especially to have a letter that has this as a condition. It should have been welcoming members of the public who rely on silos, who live there, who recreate there, whose businesses rely on that facility for their livelihood. I think that's all my points on that. So I look forward to working with you guys more. And I have to say, our relationship with BOR is unlike it's ever been in the past. And I really want to thank both of you, you and Dan, both for that. It's pretty refreshing and pretty exciting to have that relationship now, so thank you. That's all my comments. Oh, and I would like documentation of that previous master plan and the response that you got, if you could send that to me.
I think those were destroyed. We found, we were told by one of the secretaries here who wants to remain anonymous that 2 boxes of trust board materials were discarded, so we don't have those. We've got rough drafts of it, but the originals and all of our documentation on that have been tossed.
So we don't really have anything to substantiate what's said either way about those, other than opinions or perspective that may be clouded over the years.
I think the members of the trust board, if you'd like to call us into question on that, I think be careful, because we're awfully, it's the same board other than Al who put that together. If you don't believe it happened,
yeah, it
that
would
might be
help
your
to
problem,
have
not
that
ours.
documentation, especially with a letter that says, this is what we demand. I'm uncomfortable with that, especially when there was no public input. That subject should have been on the agenda, and people should have been aware of the discussion so that they could have been there to voice their opinions, or at least heard the discussion. So I'm quite concerned.
we're certainly open to discussion on it.
Yeah, I
As it
appreciate that, and you'll be
stands,
invited just
We're
like
not
the
gonna
public.
we're not gonna fund it without those conditions being met.
And
We
like
think
I
it's a
said,
waste
we'd
of money.
already agreed, Steve, but I just think it's, the trust board stepped way out of line on this. Appreciate your opinion. Without that being on your agenda, it should not have been a vote, and it should not be in this letter. So, it's
Don't agree
open
at
meeting
all,
laws.
but, and that's why, as a commissioner, we set up 2 boards. You guys get terrible pressure as commissioners, but the trust board doesn't. We make decisions based on what we feel is the best use of the money for recreation. You guys get pressures, we don't. So our decisions are made differently. We're a totally separate board, and we set it up that way for a reason. But any questions, don't hesitate to bring it forward.
Well, I will accept the grant, move to accept the grant for $32,000 to match what's already been provided, and that is in the application. The request was for $45,000, $32 with the matching donations.
Is there a second?
So your motion is just to accept the grant and not to do a renegotiation, is that correct?
No, and I think I've said this twice now. We already have talked about renegotiating the contract with BOR. Regardless of it being here, which was a violation of open meeting laws, I still think we need to move forward with that. But that is our decision to make with BOR, and it is our duty to make sure that's on the agenda so the public knows what we're doing. To have a vote that was not on the agenda is a violation of open meeting laws, and therefore my motion is just for the $32,000. We're already gonna do what their ultimatum is, so it's kind of a wash. But I'm not gonna put something that was done in opposition of open meeting laws into my motion. I don't think we should support that.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Chairman, we had a separate meeting to vote on this, that was posted.
But was it posted that you were going to be discussing the silos contract with
It was a
BOR
vote.
and severing that contract?
That came up during the meeting, the agenda said vote on their grant.
The agenda needed to say discussion regarding severing contract with BOR and the county regarding silos to comply with open meeting laws.
I don't agree with that. Let's bring legal counsel in and have it studied before you guys make any votes on this, because I think it's contrary to the direction we're going. You're gonna restrict discussion on a vote to what you published. We put a condition on it. There's a necessary condition, we felt, to protect the public funds. We don't precondition our discussion. We say, do we fund it or do we not fund it? And here's why and here's how. And that's what your discussions are about. I know we're hypersensitive to open meeting and things of that nature, but we're well within the bounds, and so is our motion. Our board decision is sound. If you'd like to have a question, fine. I would recommend you not go into a vote that's contrary to our vote. You can either yea it, nay it, or not vote on it, but
And I don't
two
think
different
we are
motions?
contrary because we have already agreed to work on it this fall. So that's what you're asking for. It does say, be canceled, that, but you also have or renegotiated. So we have already agreed to that, but not by this letter. So you're
Would-
getting your way because we already took care of it months ago.
so
And Dan
we-
is well aware of that, so.
So the record will confirm you're going to renegotiate the contract before we enter into this agreement.
We can reiterate for the minutes that we've already decided to renegotiate with BOR, certainly. We can ask Ann right now to put that in the minutes because it happened.
Before the trust board okays to the release of funds, we want assurance that this contract year, prior to entering into next year's contract, you will either cancel or renegotiate that contract. Is that true?
Already been discussed, decided on, and agreed on.
So that's a yes. Thank you.
Mhm.
Good. I'm pleased.
Al, what's your timeline? When do you have to match the BOR grant? Is it end of October?
1st of October, I believe.
1st of October?
I mean, I don't know what kind of lead time you need.
I'm not 100% sure. I know that we had to have everything agreed upon and into a contract by that, like, 1st of October for the fiscal year, so that we can give our side of the money to the county. And then I think that you guys have some time to get some money to get your matching into it.
Yeah. So we can't just do this on October 1st, you need some lead time,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
And yeah, there's definitely gonna be have some lead time for it.
okay.
So Dan, do you know what the date, if we cancel or renegotiate, what's the deadline to have that contract done?
Say that one more time.
If we cancel or renegotiate, is there a deadline that we have to have that contract done by,
In
as
order to
far
get
as
the money?
concessionaires are involved?
In order to get the funding from reclamation?
Well, or if we come in and say we don't want anything to do with that, you need to come up with a concessionaire. So is there a date, is there a deadline that we have to have that conversation by, so that you can have your concessionaire in place for next year?
I'm sure there is, but I don't know what that is off the top of my head.
Okay.
And I think that there might be a thing in there that says like, there's a 2-year notification. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's correct.
So if we did wanna just cancel, we're on the hook for 2 years to provide that ourselves.
But
So,
I don't know if that counts as a renegotiation though.
no, just to cancel.
Right.
If we renegotiate, we can talk about that and open
And I
up
would think-
discussion.
You know, I don't mean to speak for Dan or my supervisors, but I think that they would be open to renegotiation versus until those, yeah.
Okay.
And we do have that from a previous conversation,
I think so as well.
yeah.
See, what's the, you know,
I think we're getting to the end of where everybody wants to be here, just a little different way.
So there's a motion to approve the grant? Do we need to include the caveat that we will renegotiate the contract with BOR?
I think that's already been taken care of.
Okay, so we'll have a vote on approving this Broadwater County, the Broadwater Trust Board vote to approve the grant decision action.
Mr.
Any
Chairman,
further?
there has not been a second on that motion yet.
Beg your pardon?
There has not been a second on
Is there
that
a
motion.
second? Yes, Steve?
I think you should include that, just as a courtesy. I know you'd like to say it's assumed. I certainly feel better if you put that clause in.
Okay. Is there a second? Is there another motion?
I think the motion needs to include the grant and also just so for clarification that we are going to go into renegotiations with the reclamation on this contract.
Is there a second?
That's a friendly amendment. I will accept the friendly amendment. I will reiterate that the trust board is out of bounds. They violated open meeting laws. We had a closed door discussion on several issues, and that was one of them. But I will accept the friendly amendment to get this off the table because serving our citizens is the most important issue, and the point has been made regarding open meeting laws. So, yes, I accept the friendly amendment.
Okay, the motion's been made and a second. Yes, Steve?
Just point of discussion, we're certainly open to any challenges of public meeting laws. We are a very, very open board. We follow the law on it. We do not do anything contradictory to open meeting laws. Secondly, I think some recognition needs to be given to the other parties that contributed. I think it's up to $18,000. That's really terrific community support, and those local groups need to be commended. And there'll be participants and partners in this agreement, so that's a win-win.
Okay, thank you. So the motion's been made and seconded to approve the trust board, or approve of the grant, and to also include renegotiations of the contract with the BOR. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
Commissioners.
Okay, Mary Hendrickson, Public Works, yes, Coco.
Did you skip over the COS review?
Yeah, I think we did.
I don't know if I just didn't hear it. Is
Yeah,
it
we
possible
did.
to bump in
Do you
there?
have one real quick?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you. So I have two for review, same owner, same sheet, very brief. This has gone to the review committee. I think you all were able to see these COSs. This is a boundary location for the Dykema family. This is along Price Road. This is basically just to capture the Price Road right-of-way adjustment that occurred, oh gosh, several years ago. This is just to show that on the survey. It's a boundary location. Second survey, this is to create agricultural parcels, still the Dykema family. The purpose for creating these agricultural parcels is for future subdivision. So the Dykemas have this as pivot, as irrigated land. They want to create these agricultural parcels for future development. If they were to bring this whole parcel in for subdivision, this would be subdivision land. They don't want their ag land to be subdivision land. They want to keep it as ag land. So this is the best way for them to do it, to create these agricultural parcels. If they're ever to be built on, they will have to come back through subdivision review.
I move to support this, both boundary relocations and the creation of the egg tracts as presented.
I will second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the Dykema? Dykema land boundary location, agriculture tracts. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
I want to say I like our process much
I
better.
was just going to ask that. I'm so glad.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, we had a chance to look at this ahead of time
perfect.
and study it. I like it a lot better.
Okay,
Thank
well,
you.
and then it takes up less time at this table as well.
Right, because we
Thank you.
know. Hey,
Thank you.
Nicole, you had sent an email that you were going to give us 10 days.
Mhm.
I responded that I thought we didn't need 10 days and was concerned if that was going to slow down the process. Nobody responded. What is your thoughts on that? Do you think 10 is fine? Does it slow down the process?
You know, I did not hear from the landowners or the surveyors that this caused any hardships or negativity. This did go longer than the 10 days.
Right.
It could have been here at last Monday's meeting, but in any case. So this one did take a little longer, but not on the part of the county, just in getting all of the documentation together. So I have not heard that it has been a problem.
Okay, all right, if you do, would you let us know?
Oh, absolutely.
10 days seems like a very long time for me for something that we don't approve, we just support. So, yeah, if you do hear anything, I'd appreciate the feedback, but I'm good with the 10 days if it works for everybody.
Super, can you slide those this way? Please, thank you. Yeah, I will definitely keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Hendrickson, Public Works Director, Solid Waste Management District. Board bylaws approval, reaffirm board appointments for mosquito recreation.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
I put in your inbox, a couple of weeks ago, the final bylaws for the Solid Waste Advisory Board. For your approval, the copy that I had given to you was already signed by all the board members. If you have misplaced that, that's fine. I can take your signed copy to them at our next meeting. But basically, they've been working on these bylaws based on the training that we had, using the template that was given to us. There was some discussion about advisory versus supervisory board. They did have some language in here that I was opposed to, and changed that. They approved the language at the last solid waste board meeting and signed that, and that was under Article 2, Item 4, under the purpose. We revised the word, we changed the word from oversight to the narrative, reviewing ongoing operations, instead of having oversight over ongoing operations, because oversight implies management, supervision, and they're not a supervisory board. So the members were okay with that, and so I put this set of bylaws before you for final approval.
That really was the only change, wasn't it?
It was, yes, yes.
Is there a motion to approve the Solid Waste Management District Advisory Board bylaws?
Yeah, I'll make the motion that we approve the solid waste management district bylaws.
Is there a second?
Yep, I'll second the motion.
Motion's been made and second to approve the Broadwater County Solid Waste Management District Advisory Board bylaws. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Do we need to reaffirm the board appointments for the mosquito?
Yeah, those have always been kind of a management thing, ministerial, which is part of what we can do. But to avoid any upset and to be doubly sure that we are complying with open meeting laws, I did put it on the agenda just, again, to avoid upset. So,
Go ahead.
we had Stacy Summer, who wanted to be appointed to both the rec board and the mosquito boards. We did approve that already, so this would be a reaffirmation of that. And Tom Hay wants to also be appointed to the mosquito board, and that would also, this would be a reaffirmation of that vote as well. So if you like, I'd be happy to put that into the form of a
Okay,
motion.
if you would, please.
I move to reaffirm the appointments of Tom Hay and Stacy Summer to the Mosquito Board and Stacy Summer to the Recreation Board for the terms described last week.
Is there any further or is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same, motion carries. Okay, a letter of support for the local Billings Clinic Care and Nursing Home Services.
So I sent this out to you guys before the meeting, and it certainly can complement and be stapled to Kyle's letter. I'm totally open to any edits that you guys have or want to add. You guys want a copy? I didn't put, well, I'll let you guys read it and let me know what you think. And if you want to send it, I thought it was best to maybe be a letter to the citizens versus a letter to either Billings Clinic or anyone else. Also open to your suggestions on that.
And I had did you get a copy of this, Ann? There's a pile in there, it's
Thank you.
talking points from the hospital.
And I'd be in support, when we're done with the letter, of reading this into the record. I think it's a good idea.
Okay.
And I think there's some really good points made there.
Question, Mr. Chair, the letter that you folks are going to look at for privilege, does that just basically reaffirm what's been on the sheet for handout, or is it something different?
It's pretty much the same message, I think.
You can have mine too.
So do you want to read both of these then, or just one?
It's up to you.
So this is the commission's letter. Support for the Broadwater Clinic, for Billings Clinic and long-term care for seniors. Dear citizens, the Broadwater County Board of County Commissioners supports Billings Clinic coming to Townsend and Broadwater County to provide top-quality medical care and top-quality long-term care for seniors with special needs. In fact, a strong focus of our community is maintaining our long-term care facility, maintaining that service and enhancing the already 5-star rating it has earned. For our seniors in need of specialized care, our local hospital is essential. Those folks need to be able to remain where they grew up, raise their families, and have their network of friends. For them, it's about the quality of their lives. We support the local providers we currently have that complement the work Billings Clinic will be able to provide. Family Medical Clinic, 3-Dimensional Health and Wellness, County Public Health Services, Broadwater Family Chiropractic, Dr. Gary Lytle, and Townsend Dental. Sincerely, Commissioners. And we have a letter from the hospital, Hometown Hospital. We want a hometown hospital with local community involvement that will grow and thrive. Billings Clinic has a proven track record to help us achieve our community goals. Our community is benefited significantly by Hometown Hospital. We want a hometown hospital with local community involvement that will grow and thrive. Having a thriving hospital is critical to every community like ours. If our hospital and nursing home go away, we'll never get them back. By staying focused on our hometown hospital, it will continue helping our local economy thrive. Our hometown hospital will suffer if others come into town and carve out the lucrative parts of healthcare. Patients, especially senior care patients, will be shipped outside of our community. Since 1905, our hometown hospital has been a key part of the fabric of our community. Let's keep jobs local at one of our community's largest employers, including our talented and caring staff. Our community board chose a partner that is experienced and committed to rural health care and sustaining our hometown hospital. We need to keep care local. The hospital board will remain a community board. local involvement. It is important that our community decides how healthcare is delivered here. This is Billings Clinic's model for its partners across Montana and is their commitment to our community. All over the country, small rural hospitals are threatened. We don't want to lose our hometown hospital, senior care, and rehabilitative services. Billings Clinic's partners like Red Lodge and Columbus are growing and thriving. When a hometown community finds a trusted partner, they roll up their sleeves and work together. We want that here in our hometown community. Broadwater Health Center is one of the major employers in our county and provides good jobs to keep talented people here. We are like a family. Let's work together to ensure we keep our hometown hospital and its people. Billings Clinic is investing in our community to help our hometown hospital grow and thrive. Our healthcare entities who invest in our community in a self-serving way would use it as a launching pad to take business away from our community. Local business and community leaders are and will remain involved in the plans Billings Clinic has for Broadwater Health Center. Grow and thrive. Billings Clinic has a proven track record. They have broad and deep experience in managing and helping its community partners succeed. What will happen to our community if we lose our hometown hospital? If we lose our hometown hospital, we have no chance of saving our nursing home. We lose one of our largest employers in Broadwater County and lose the heart of our community. We are concerned that an outside clinic will duplicate services that are already available here and could drive our hometown hospital out of business. Billings Clinic brings us an affiliation with Mayo Clinic, which will enhance the ability of our local providers to access information and get advice to help care for us in our community. Billings Clinic has a proven track record of sustaining outreach partners across Montana, including communities big and small. We trust that Billings Clinic will help us keep our care local and get patients who need a different level of care to their facility of choice. St. Peter's, please don't cherry pick health care from this community to save referrals you will get anyway. You are putting us at risk of losing our hometown hospital. Is there a motion to sign both of these letters?
Mr. Chairman, if you just ask a question, this letter is fine, it's great. But what I need to ask you is, has this board taken a formal position on the sale of this hospital to Billings Clinic? If this sale is what drives everything else, and I would ask the commissioners to formally support the fact that Townsend Health Systems has chosen Billings Clinic to be the purchaser of this hospital. Now, we have a signed purchase agreement, but we haven't gotten to a closing yet. The closing's still 2 months away. But I'm asking for you to consider giving us a motion of support for the sale along with, plus the support of this letter. Because it's the sale that is really germane here.
I would be more than happy to mention in the first paragraph that we support the sale, if you guys are good with that.
I'm good with it. I don't know that we can.
But see, you do have an interest in this. The hospital owes you money, warrants. And if this sale doesn't materialize, who knows?
What still has to happen, Brad, for this? I know we still got this period of time to go here yet.
We have the 2 months left to get to closing. It's no different than selling your house. You get an offer, everybody signs an offer, and then there's a closing when everything checks out. And
The way I understand it, we've just entered an exclusive agreement.
yes.
Correct, with Billings Clinic. If something were not to work out there, we would still have to fall back on what you guys have worked on before, right?
Well,
Other entities, is that right?
well, I don't know where we would go if this fell through. You know, we don't have a good relationship with St. Peter's at this point. Now, we would be happy to talk about why we chose Billings Clinic if anybody wants to to know or care, but there's a situation here that if this doesn't work out, it's gonna, there's gonna be real ripple effects.
I wouldn't have a problem with a motion of support.
That's all I was asking for.
Okay, because we can't give approval for a sale that hasn't been finalized.
Well, and the sale is between the hospital leadership and Billings Clinic. It doesn't necessarily involve, except that you have a financial interest in this. And all I was really asking for was a clear motion of support for the sale.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with that. So is there a motion for, yes, Shirley?
I'm still not clear on all this ownership and whatever. Who owns the hospital? Does the hospital board own the hospital?
The district board.
The district board.
Correct.
Can the three of you decide for the citizens of Broadwater County to do this?
Well, it's not the citizens of Broadwater, it's the citizens of the district. It's not the citizens of Broadwater County.
It's citizens of what? I didn't hear.
The citizens of the hospital district. Because
Okay,
the entire
okay.
county does not own the hospital.
Correct. But maybe we should have this brought up in a public meeting.
Well, I think that we,
After listening to this, but, I mean, I could see a letter of support, but I think we need public input.
well, that's what I'm saying, that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying, is I think that we can go ahead with a vote of support. The
Right.
commission supports the sale, but we can't approve the sale until the district has brought it to us, I believe.
I would think that would be good, Jeff.
Yes, Tim?
I guess Shirley pretty much covered what my question was without anyone here today at this public meeting with this on the agenda from the hospital district, which is a separate elected body to the citizens in Broadwater County, not in its entirety, as you pointed out, without them here to address that support and or that move even, it's hard. Some of us have been to those town halls where they are showing support, but it's not been in an official capacity at this point. So again, that transparency and that accountability is on the table, and we respectfully request, and I am speaking as a citizen of Broadwater County. Thank you.
What's the actual wording on the agenda?
The actual wording on the agenda, Mr. Chairman, letter of support for local Billings Clinic Health Care and nursing home services.
Okay. So all we're addressing is the letter of support, and by approving this letter of support and your letter, then I think that gives you the same support that you were looking for Billings Clinic.
And the facts are, is the letter of intent that we sent was by and large accepted, but now we work through the process, and once that process is completed, we'll take that back to the district board for their approval and purchase at that point in time. And that will be held with public meetings, more than one, I would guess.
Okay. And before we vote or make a motion, I just want to reiterate that I am not a member of the hospital board, THS's board. I simply attend their meetings for information for commissioners. So we will entertain a motion to approve and sign the letter of support and the hometown hospital document provided to us. Is there a second, or a motion and a second?
Make a motion.
Sure, I will move, I'm gonna make three points to my motion. So I move that, one, we sign the letter of support as presented. Two, we sign the hometown hospital document as presented. And three, that we voice our support for the sale to Billings Clinic.
Is there a second?
I will second that motion.
Motion's been made and second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for all your hard work, you guys. I know it's been a long process. And so, you know, we do support you.
Appreciate it.
Well, keeping the hospital open is the primary consideration.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shirley?
So is there anything else to come before the board?
I have a couple of things, some questions and follow-up. I have a thank you card here for Harold Laddie coming to see us. Wondered if you guys wanted to sign it. So there's a junk vehicle survey that was sent out. I forwarded that to Mary and, or maybe it was Mike, and Michelle. Michelle is the administrator, Mike Myers does the work. And Michelle emailed back and she said, I think this is much more commissioner questions than those I have answers to. So I was wondering if either of you had filled that out or if you were willing to.
I looked at it, but I thought
I
that
did, I
Mary,
looked at it this morning, but I haven't filled anything.
I thought Mary was gonna handle it.
Okay. Do you want to ask her or should the commissioner?
So is Mary doing?
No, it's not
her-
actually in her
Mike
department.
Or Mike's doing it?
Well, yeah, except Michelle is the administrator, Mike is the worker, he does the loading of vehicles and takes them where they need to go. But according to Michelle, the questions were more commissioner related, more policy related.
Okay.
So that's why she thought we should do it instead. I just wanted to verify with you guys that one of us was gonna do it. And then the second question I had is the assistant position for sanitation. We have had an assistant position in that department for years and years, long before I was here. Right now, we're paying a contractor $125 an hour, and right now, he's doing a lot of clerical work, which should be at 15. We voted on this, the minutes have been provided, thank you, Ann. I would like to move forward with that. The only thing we changed is we took one position and we created two and added part-time positions to each of those. Neither of them is 40, they're both part-time, or 32 hours per week. The only thing we added to that was planning, again, because our planner doing minutes is paid more money than a clerical assistant would be. In the long run, this is a money saver. So, is there a reason we can't move forward?
No, I don't, I thought I sent an email.
Okay, I didn't see it yet. All right.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem moving forward. I got Marley hesitation, I wanted to make sure that we had approved our budget before we go hire people. I knew that we approved to hire the position. And now that not our budget approved, I say let's get it done.
Okay, I was confused because
No.
it was okay for district court, but it was not okay for sanitation.
Well, I guess the reason that.
Why?
Yeah, because district court, when we just basically, the money had already been allotted, we just changed the duties, where she's doing district court and, finance.
Same with sanitation.
And sanitation, but they weren't doing planning for it, and sanitation, you see what I'm saying? It doesn't matter, it's tit for tat. That was my reason for waiting.
Okay.
Budget's approved, the money's there, let's hire the people.
Okay, so it's
That's
on
all.
record, we're good with, I will
Yes.
tell Michelle and let's get that done.
Yeah.
All right, good. The other, I have two questions then, I don't know if Brenda's still
Were they gonna be
here?
advertised in-house first, that was another question.
I would like to parallel, if we can. So run it in-house, if we get qualified applicants and they come through the interview process, great. If they don't, or we want a bigger pool, it's been running parallel and we can a week later
Yeah,
do
we
that.
get filled
Does that work for you guys?
Okay.
Advertising both ways, yeah.
Okay, that way we don't lose that time. The newspaper, Bobby wrote an article for her husband that said that somebody, the commission, had guaranteed the sheriff's office that they would not be subject to the state's portion of floating mills. I talked with Debbie, she did not do that, neither did Michelle. Did either of you give that guarantee? Okay. And then the other thing is Wynn said 2 weeks ago that there's 6 pending lawsuits in the detention center. If you look at MCA code, there's at least 3 different sections of code that state that all lawsuits go through the county commission. We already know that. Even if we're not involved in it, the lawsuits still come through the commission because we're the ones that handle the money. So I'm wondering if one of you can follow up and find out what those are so that we are aware. I'm not aware of any, and
Well,
I'm
the
a
one is,
commissioner.
the meeting that I sat in on was the one prisoner that had it's a bogus claim from like 12 years ago. He got arrested and came in here, and Donnie kinda made a remark, and that guy chuckled, and then he got rearrested and got shipped back, and then Donnie was there, so he filed a lawsuit because Donnie violated his civil rights 18 years ago, and he still has a job.
Right, and that's one,
And
one of the prisoners that we're paying for up in Townsend to eliminate that conflict of, Helena.
Sure, I knew what you meant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eliminate that
That's the
conflict of
only
interest.
one that I know of.
But, yeah.
Okay, he said there were 6. If that means there's 5 more, I think we just need to verify with him that there are not, or that there are, and we need to find out what those are.
Yeah.
That's
So-
something I'm aware of as well.
Okay, can one of you find out? I don't think I can. Okay, and then just respond via email or in our next meeting? Okay. Those were all my questions for today.
Brandon's right here, do we have 6 lawsuits, Brandon?
I think we have, well, yeah, I know we have 2 for sure. I think what he's referring to is there's been some severe incidents and we've received, I don't know how many exactly off the top of my head, but we've received, letters basically that we forwarded to Corey.
Okay.
Some maybe
Just pending stuff?
Yeah, it's not reached that stage yet, but could very well possibly be there with the legal stuff we've received, so.
So 2 actual,
I almost want to say there's 3, but I know 2 right off the top of my head. I couldn't give you a definite guarantee. I don't know. I know the sheriff receives a lot of legal mail, more than I do, and he handles that. So I couldn't give you a guaranteed answer.
very good.
So, the one in Helena is not the one that you're referring to.
That guy's in Great Falls, isn't he?
I think he's in prison, but it's the other one that we moved to Helena. So.
Could you get us a report or something, Brandon, just because it's by law, our detention center, the law also says we're supposed to be aware of the lawsuits?
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to give you a report. I think you should probably go to Corey or the
Okay.
sheriff. I don't know.
Okay,
I have no access to none of that paperwork. I'm not on it. The sheriff's the one that, I just miss out on those things, thankfully, we're in my position, so.
okay, appreciate that, thanks.
And then I don't know if he's referring to the one that just settled out. Was that maybe a year, maybe not even quite a year ago or not, so. You'd have to talk to him.
Okay,
Thanks, Brandon.
thanks.
Do you have something, Tim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a real quick question. Timbers Redoubt News. You guys had a meeting with Harold Blatty, who was the executive of Mako for a long time. We weren't unable to make that meeting. Could you give a quick summary of what Mr. Blatty's up to with the county and what's going on there?
He's just basically touring the state, talking to counties about the operation of Mako and what the commissioner's duties are and stuff like that. It's nothing specific to Broadwater County, he's going to every county in the state as kind of helping, Eric Bryson, with relations through the counties and see what issues the counties have with MACO.
So basically, Mr., he's then basically lobbying for MACO across the state in an unofficial process, I mean, what?
Well,
No, he's not
he's
lobbying.
just interviewing commissioners to see what's going on as far as the relationship with MACO goes and what we're looking for from MACO to get ready for the fall conference.
Mr. Chairman, there are minutes,
Oh, are
approved
there?
minutes of the
Okay,
meeting.
yeah.
Yeah, there was. Mhm.
Okay. Thank you. Just trying to get a clarification.
Okay, so I will not be here next week. I have union negotiation training in Billings.
That's right. You can be gone just the first part of, or the whole week? You can be gone all week?
Till Thursday, and then I have a meeting with Corey on Joe Smiles.
Yeah. So the 9th, 10th, 11th, that's what I had down as you're gonna be gone.
Yeah.
No, okay. Roger.
Anything else? Okay, we will adjourn at 12:48.